All right, we're just going to give everybody a little bit of time to find their way to us before we start.
Now we swapped. Now the turtlenecks are on a diagonal and the florals are on a diagonal.
There we go.
There we go. It's balanced now.
It's more pleasing to the eye.
We planned it. I like having my gallery wall behind me now. It feels very fancy.
You all have a nice background except for me. Mine is just this gloomy library study room. At least it's very well lit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I have every single light on in this part of my house. I have a lamp, overhead light, other lamp, kitchen light. It's a problem.
All right. We have a couple viewers now.
All right. Well, I guess we can kick it off officially then. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for stopping by Reference Roundtable today. This is where librarians from the Sioux City Public Library's Reference Department talk books, movies, and all kinds of library stuff. My name is Lacey, and joined today by Jessie, Kelsey, and Sarah. Please just jump on in if you're on Facebook with us. We love hearing your comments and questions, so fire away. We like to hear what you've got to say to us. Today we are talking about what I think is a very fun topic. We're going to be talking about graphic novels. I feel like I have to start a little bit by kind of talking about graphic novels. They're kind of in the world of literature and books, they're kind of a new kid on the block. The actual term graphic novel actually was first coined in 1964. But obviously graphic novels have been around longer than that. The first kind of recognized graphic novels were started in the 19th century, and they tended to be bound books of serial comics. Kind of what we think of now as the more modern graphic novel really took off in the 1970s here in the United States. The graphic novel called A Contract with God by Will Eisner came out in 1978, and it officially called itself a graphic novel, and it became very popular and really kind of coined the term and made it more widespread where, just your average person was knowing what you were talking about. So today we're really going to focus kind of on the American idea of graphic novels. Every country has their own version of graphic novels, their way of describing them, what they mean to that person in that country. We could do a whole episode talking about what's a graphic novel, what is not a graphic novel. Much smarter people have written papers and have very strong opinions, but I belong to the club that says there's really no exact definition that you can just close the book and say, this is it. It has to fall into these categories. I'm very inclusive, but I don't think that's too surprising for a librarian. So we're not going to argue today what is a graphic novel and what isn't. We'll leave that to the experts. All right. I have to kick this off, I feel like, by talking about probably one of the graphic novels that anybody would think of if they hear the term, and that is Watchmen. This beautiful, lovely thing that you've probably seen around if you've ever been to a Barnes & Noble or any bookstore anywhere. It is by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, and it's huge. It's like Shakespeare in the world of graphic novels. You've heard of it, kind of the story a little bit, even if you've never read it. It was actually voted one of Time Magazine's 100 best novels of the 20th century. The only graphic novel to make it on there. So it was a big deal when it came out. And long story short, it is basically kind of an alternate history story. It takes place in the mid-1980s. It's very much a kind of a Cold War story. The United States and the Soviet Union are really kind of on the brink of World War III. And this is a world in which there are superheroes. People know there are superheroes. But they're not looked on positively anymore. And you really, in this story, you get to see the lives of these superheroes. They're human beings. They have failings. They make poor decisions. They do everything we do. And it's just it's a great big story. A lot of stuff happens. But I'd recommend you just read it to find out.
Definitely. I remember reading that in a Barnes and Noble, just kind of grabbing it off the shelf, sitting down on the floor, and just reading it from cover to cover. They might frown on that, but I did it anyway, and it was just so good.
Yeah, I remember reading it very, very quickly. I mean, it looks big, and it is big. I mean, but there are a lot of pictures. It's very colorful. I think for as long as it is, it reads very fast. It's a fast-paced story. There's a lot of action.
Cool. So I'm going to talk about the first graphic novel I ever read, and that is Fun Home, and it's by Alison Bechdel. Yes. And so I actually read this by accident because I read the synopsis. I had no idea it was a graphic novel. I read about it and it was like, oh, this sounds really good. It's actually a memoir, I love memoirs. So I'm like, yeah, this sounds like my kind of book. So I put it on hold and I got it and I opened it and I'm like, oh, it's a graphic novel.
So you didn't even know it was a graphic novel.
Nope. So I'm like, well, I have it. I'm going to try it anyway. And it was really good. I really enjoyed the story. Alison Bechdel, she was actually known for her cartoon strip, Dykes to Watch Out For. And Fun Home was her first book that she wrote. And she kind of recollects her childhood, centers around her father a lot. And she came out as a lesbian to her parents. And it wasn't until later that she found out her father was gay also. And before they could kind of reconcile with each other and talk about each other, he passed away. So that's what it says. It's a tragic comedy because it's kind of a heartbreaking story, but she also throws in a lot about her childhood. Her dad did a lot of renovating. He would renovate a different part of their house every day. And he directed a funeral home. So that's where the Fun Home comes from. They called it the Fun Home when they were kids. So I just recently found out that they actually created a musical adaptation of the book. So it's been running on Broadway since 2015, I believe. So interesting stuff. Cool. Yeah.
You like those heart-wrenching stories, don't you, Sarah?
I guess I do.
The memoirs, yeah.
I guess the first one that I'm going to recommend, as much as I don't like scary movies, I do seem to gravitate towards creepy, scary, haunting graphic novels and fiction. So the first one I'm going to recommend is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This one, you really kind of do the whole journey through the woods, and it's really sinister and it's compellingly spooky. It's a collection of 5 stories that she put together, and she's actually an award-winning comic creator online, and then this was her first work in print. So it includes the phenomenally popular webcomic sensation His Face All Red, so that you get to see that in print for the first time. And then these are truly just fairy tales gone seriously, seriously wrong. So you can travel to our neighbor's house. That kind of, the coming back is kind of a problem. You can find yourself a young bride in a house that holds a terrible secret and a lady's hands are cold. You might try to figure out what is haunting my friend Jana, or discover that your brother's fiance may not be what she seems in the nesting place. So they kind of have this super creepy tone, like I mentioned.
That sounds creepy. That sounded.
I don't. Okay. It's definitely good, but creepy.
Well, we do have a comment from what Sarah was talking about, and it's from a lady named Jeannie. And she says, I like renovating. Might have to look for it.
She's not wrong.
No. Allison's father goes a little extreme, though, with the everyday thing. So,
Sarah, Jeannie has been renovating a house for like 15 years. That's
okay. So you could definitely relate then.
Is she turning it into a fun home?
No. Oh. I feel like I could say that being her child and have grown up throughout the renovation during my high school years. There was one summer we all lived in the living room together. So, yeah.
So she should check out this title. For
Yeah,
real.
she might enjoy it.
All right, so my two choices today weren't standalone graphic novels. They were serialized. And they did come out in comic book form first, but they also come out in volumes in graphic novels. And they definitely have an end date, which is part of defining a graphic novel from the way I view it. But the first one is my all-time favorite. It's not going to make anybody's best of list. It's not going to win, it did win some awards, but it's not going to be the best 100 graphic novels of all time. But it's the graphic novel series Fables by Bill Willingham. There it is. Illustrated primarily by Mark Buckingham. And I love a really good fairy tale folklore retelling. And that's exactly what these are. It's fairy tale characters. You're doing such a great job, Lacey. That's awesome. They're fairy tale characters who have been run out of their homeland by this ominous character called the Adversary. And this happened centuries ago. And what they did is that they created their own clandestine community in New York City. So they all know that they're fairy tale characters, and they all govern themselves, but they don't necessarily, shout out that, hey, this is who we are. And you have like Bigby Wolf is the big bad wolf, and he's the sheriff of the town. And Snow White is the mayor, and Toad is the janitor of the. So it's that sort of stuff. And off on something called the farmland are the fairy tale characters who can't pass as humans. So you're like the Three Little Pigs, things like that. So it's going back and forth between the government in New York City, this tiny little town, and the farmland with the animal characters. And it's going back and forth. And it won the Eisner Award at Comic-Con. And Lacey mentioned Eisner was the first one who coined the term graphic novel. So it did win the Eisner Award, and it got several Hugo Awards. So it is awarded, but it's just so much fun. And Bill Willingham also wrote a traditional novel called Peter and Max, which is a story of the Pied Piper and his brother. And it's just a really good retelling of alternative fairy tales. And I love it. It's my absolute favorite. And it ran from July of 2002 until July of 2015. So that's definitely one I would recommend.
Well, I'm here to bring us down, to not have any more fun with my next choice. I have to talk about Mouse. I'm sure this is probably another one a lot of people have heard of, maybe not read, but they've seen it. And this is a graphic novel written by a man called Art Spiegelman. And it is basically a retelling of what happened to his father during World War II. Why it's kind of so different is, as you can see, it's called Mouse, M-A-U-S. And as you can see on the cover, those are some of the main characters. They are mice. The characters are mice. In this retelling of it, the Jews are portrayed as mice and the Nazis are cats. So you can kind of see the story he's going for there, it's very sad. You know, it's a story of the Jewish Holocaust. So it's not a lighthearted story, but it's beautifully told. So, I mean, I definitely recommend reading it again. Hard. Yeah, it'll tug at the heartstrings for sure, but it's very simple. You know, it's black and white. There's no color or anything, you know, exciting in it. But I think that adds to it, the simplicity of the black and white colors and the drawings. It lets the story speak more than the pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so the second graphic novel I've ever read, which I read too, and I just read it. I have to be honest.
Hey, it could be two more than our viewers, so
hey, you know,
I'm sure plenty of other people are in your same boat.
Oh,
I haven't read very many myself, so
no. I just read it too. So anyway, it is Fight Club 2, and it's by Chuck Palahniuk. And I read it because, well, when we were started talking about we were going to do an episode of graphic novels, I'm like, okay, I know I've read one, and I know of another one that I haven't read yet. So I decided to read it. And I read it after I read some reviews from diehard Chuck Palahniuk fans that were saying, don't read it. This is horrible. If you like Fight Club at all, do not read this graphic novel. And I read it anyway. I wasn't super impressed, but I'm glad I read it. It's interesting. It's an interesting take on a Chuck Palahniuk book because, you know, his books are so complex and interesting. And sometimes you have to reread paragraphs several times to even get what he's saying. So I liked the pictures along with his story. It was a super fast read, and you know, it was the same characters, and he kind of expanded on Fight Club and took some weird turns and even wrote himself into it. But I really liked yeah. So it was interesting. I'm glad I read it. And the fables sound so interesting, so I might read some more graphic novels now. So
I think I'm gonna have to try fables too.
Yeah. So anyway,
Adam did comment on Mouse, and I thought it did as well. But he commented that he believed that Mouse won the Pulitzer, and then Joe said it did in 1992. So
thank you, fellas.
I thought it had. I thought it had, but I wasn't for sure. So thank you guys for bringing that up.
Look at them doing
graphic
research.
Novels can win Pulitzers. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
They're doing research like reference librarians.
Yeah.
I like Jeannie's comment.
Oh, Jeannie, yes. Going back to the amount of renovations going on, she cried a lot.
I was 14. What did you expect? Fine. So my second graphic novel is a total switch from Through the Woods, and it's Relish by Lucy Nicely. It was a New York Times bestseller, an NPR Best Book of 2013. Publishers Weekly loved it. It's full of, her voice is so humorous in it. There's great candid storytelling, colorful and cartoony illustrations, if my Lacey/Vanna White will show you. So each chapter, you know, she bookends it with an illustrated recipe, and many of them are these treasured family dishes, and a few of them are Lucy's kind of own original inventions. So kind of the whole premise is that she loves food. You know, she's the daughter of foodies. She's a talented young cartoonist. So she kind of comes by her obsession with food pretty honestly. So
I kind of need all of my cookbooks to look like that.
Right? I'm like, if cookbooks had pictures and were, you know, all that kind of,
yeah.
So throughout Relish, she traces key episodes in her life thus far, you know, kind of framed by what she was eating at the time and lessons learned about food, cooking, and life. So it really is kind of this welcome read for anyone who has a passion, like more passion for a sandwich than is probably acceptable. It's really kind of a graphic novel for our time because it really invites the reader to celebrate food as a connection to our bodies and to the earth rather than as an enemy or a compulsion or a consumer product. So I thought it was a really interesting take for a memoir, and then for it to be in graphic novel form, I was like, this is amazing. It was just such a cool take that I loved it. And it made me want to eat, make all the recipes.
I want those huevos rancheros that I
Yes, I'm very glad that you put that one up there.
I was like, all right.
Lacey is the Vanna White for books. Yes, she is.
I'm getting pretty good.
Yeah, you are.
Pretty good.
I think she practiced.
All right, so my second one might have the most name recognition of any of the ones that we talked about today, and that was a serial graphic novel. You might have heard of it, called The Walking Dead.
No.
So The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore was the first artist who did it. Tells the story of zombies, and obviously I'm really be surprised if you haven't heard of the AMC series The Walking Dead. It's based off of this graphic novel, and it's the story of Rick, a sheriff in Kentucky, who woke up and found that his entire town and world had been attacked by zombies. And it's him trying to find his family and then create his own little group of people to keep each other alive. And it's basically, that's the premise. It's a zombie apocalypse. And what I find interesting about it is that some of the absolute best character relationships that you can find in literature, because you're put in these extreme, absurd circumstances, but true everyday emotions and everyday interactions and everyday relationships just become more heightened. And one of the things I remember watching the first episode of Walking Dead when it came out, the graphic novel actually started in October of 2003 and then ran until last July. But the thing I remember watching the first episode of The Walking Dead was they were doing shots from the graphic novel. Like they were taking panels of the graphic novel and making a shot out of it. And I'm sitting there having read the graphic novels, having read the comics books going, oh, that's exactly how it was. And it just got me really excited. I can be excitable anyway when something's cool, but it got me really excited that, okay, they're for real about this. They're wanting to do this and do the graphic novel proud. The series did end up going in a different direction than the graphic novel did itself. But that's for anything. I mean, that's going to happen when it becomes its own thing. But that was another one that I felt had to be mentioned if we're going to talk about graphic novels.
Absolutely. So the one thing that I think is just super important about graphic novels is to realize that there's really something for everyone. I was browsing our wonderful, fantastic library app, Libby, that you can read ebooks on. And they have a surprising amount of graphic novels on there, just a ton. I checked out actually this morning, The Fifth Beatle, the Brian Epstein story. I am a huge Beatles fan, and Brian Epstein was their manager, and he actually passed away kind of at the height of their fame. And so this is his story. They also have on there, and I thought that Jesse would appreciate this. They also have the graphic novel adaptation of Full Moon, which is the first Dresden Files book. So maybe you don't want to read a full novel on that, is fantasy, but maybe, sitting down an hour or two with a graphic novel is more your speed. And they even have a trilogy called March. It is about the civil rights icon, John Lewis, and his life and his lifelong fight for equality. So basically there is a graphic novel out there for anyone. I mean, they have ones like that are about like the history of England. I mean, if you're just looking for some facts with some pretty pictures, if you want a crazy story, if you want, a true life story, there's everything.
Exactly. And Patty here is proving your point. She says, I haven't read one graphic novel, but after listening today, Mouse and Relish sounds like this might be my first and my second.
Excellent.
So,
Yeah,
and
I've read a lot, but I've never read Relish, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, me too. Anne also says that this is a whole new world for me. I've never heard of any of these titles, so I bet you there is something for you.
Yeah, and you don't have to like all of them. That's totally acceptable.
Oh no! I mean, just like you don't have to like every traditional novel. I mean, this is literally the same. And then Adam, I thought about talking about this one as well, but Adam brought it up. V for Vendetta.
Yes.
It's pretty good, and there's the film which was a big hit when it came out. I liked it too, Adam. I did.
I did too, and that's actually by Alan Moore as well. The graphic novel, the same author that wrote Watchmen. So
Watchmen, yeah. And I just want to say, why The Last Man, one of the greatest serial graphic novels of all time. Bone is great. I read it to my kid, and it was the first graphic novel he's ever read. And also Chew is really weird and twisted, and I love it. So you can look all those up as well. So I had to get those in. I'm sorry.
Go to Jesse for your weird and twisted graphic novel recommendation.
Then I go scary or food related. So Oh, then Jeannie says, I agree with Patty. Yeah. I think they're definitely worth a shot. And I think with the kind of trend to adapting so many, traditional YA books or just fiction in general into graphic novel adaptations now, there's one for Jane Eyre that's out there. There's the Graveyard Book. There's so many different things that if you already read that book, it can be kind of fun to then go read the graphic novel to kind of almost like a movie. You can see how they've adapted it and see, does the adaptation live up to the hype? Do they create this character and make them look like how you thought they were going to look as a cartoon, and different things like that.
You could probably find any classic novel has a graphic novel somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of like really classic stuff like Dickens or Shakespeare. They're all out there.
Yeah. And Anne, this makes us so happy. Yeah. I'm glad you've taken notes and that you want to grab a couple of them when we open. I love reading that.
Oh, and okay, I have to do this because I'm leading this, so I can take over. I also have to mention, I didn't bring it with me, but a honorable mention goes to Andre, which is a graphic novel about Andre the Giant, the wrestler from the 80s and early 90s. It's just a fantastic story. You don't even have to like wrestling, which is I think it helps. But you don't have to like wrestling.
He was in The Princess Bride too.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
That's true. He was in The Princess Bride.
I feel like
they do talk about that as well.
Episode to like plug wrestling somehow, and this is it.
You bet. You bet. Well, we can maybe wrap up here with Adam's last comment. That he says, I'll let you bring it up here.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up.
You can go into the superhero area as well with Superman, Batman, and such. Superman Red Sun is good with the idea of Superman coming to Earth in the Soviet Union instead of the US.
Yep.
And absolutely, there are tons of superhero ones if that's more your interest. Red Sun is really cool, and it's like he said, basically Superman isn't American. He is communist. So it's kind of him as a communist hero than kind of the all-American hero. So very interesting kind of alternate history.
I could talk so much more about this, but I won't. I'll stop.
Look for Jesse's spin-off of Reference Roundtable. Well, we really thank all of you for coming out and commenting and sharing with us. We always have so much fun when you join on in. We hope that you are going to be here next Tuesday. We are going to discuss one of just the big ones, the big authors, Agatha Christie. I will try not to talk too much. As always, we want to hear from you guys. If you have any more comments, feel free to comment below on here. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can even shoot us an email at questions@siouxcitylibrary.org. We hope you had fun. We'll see you on Tuesday. Until then, keep reading, Sioux City.